I'd just like to say that there will be an opportunity for questions throughout the session. So please do feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll be looking at those at different points throughout the session. Okay, so without further kind of preamble, I'm going to pass over to Gillian, and thanks very much for coming, everybody.
Okay, well, thank you, Anna, for that lovely introduction, and thank you to everybody for coming online today. So we're going to be talking about attention to diversity, specifically about learners with special education needs. Okay, so let's start off by thinking, so what is diversity? So I thought, well, I'll go and look in the dictionaries and see what it says. So here are some different dictionary definitions. Okay, so you can see, yeah, varied, variety, different, coming up, range, which are very different from each other. So yeah, human nature is quite often we you know, the difference is we like to find out what stands out. What I'm also interested in is like diversity, okay, in the quote of the last one, okay, so the inclusion, the deliberate inclusion, okay, of all those differences together. And so that's something that I'd like to do an activity with you about, with that in mind, that you could perhaps try in your classes. Okay, so looking at how you might have different learners from different cultural backgrounds, with different beliefs, lots of different learning styles, etc. So we're going to do an activity together, and for this you're going to need a pen or a pencil and a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be a very big piece of paper, like that is fine. Okay, and I'd like you to write some initials on it, you'll see in a minute, and then we're going to I'll unshare the presentation and we can all share our pieces of paper and see what we can find. Okay, so it's called the Chocolate Spread Sandwich Survey, and it is to celebrate diversity in an inclusive way. So it's an adaptation of one which was called the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but I don't know how many people here eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, so I thought it would be better to do a chocolate spread survey instead. So first of all, I want you to think about the type of bread that you use for your spread sandwich. So if you use a baguette or part of a baguette, then just write a big B. If you use white sliced, WS, brown slice, BS. Maybe you have a biscuit. Maybe you use biscuits, you don't use bread. So you can put those letters or punctuation things which are in bold. And for you're like, well, I don't actually like chocolate spread sandwiches, so if if that's your option, then you can put a nice capital N for none. Okay, so everybody's got their first initials down, I hope. And okay, then you need to think about what type of chocolate spread you use inside your sandwich. So again, do you use a market brown? Do you make your own? Wow, I'm really impressed if you do. Do you use a supermarket own brand? They're just as good. Or you don't use chocolate spread, you have something else instead. So again, choose your capital letters and punctuation marks and put them next to the first letter or letters. Okay, so then moving on to what type of spread you use. Okay, I actually did this in the previous session. Where I've put milk, I actually mean white, you know, the white spread that you can get. Plain means the brown, the milk chocolate, and dark means now you can get some, you know, posh dark chocolate spreads as well, or the one which is mixed, where you get the white and the brown one in together. Or again, no spread, it's another N. Okay, so then moving on to how much spread. Be honest with yourselves. How much spread do you use? Just a little, a regular amount, lots, or none? Okay, and finally, you can see those funny pictures at the bottom. Well, so how do you cut the bread? If you've chosen white sliced or brown sliced, this is for you. Yeah. Do you have no cut? Do you use 2 triangles or 4 mini triangles, rectangles, mini squares? And I'm not sure why that's come out in blue, but again, you can choose the capital of each word and write them again next to your other initials that you have. For example, if you chose a baguette, well, then maybe you don't cut it into triangles or into a square, but maybe it has the crust. And again, if you have a biscuit instead of bread, well, maybe you put MC because, yeah, there's no cut. Okay, so you've got complete flexibility to choose whichever initials you want to and need to have. Okay. So on your piece of paper, you should have a line of different initials. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing the presentation for a moment, and I'd like everybody to share their cameras. Put your cameras on, please, and hold up your piece of paper. Okay, it might take a minute. Okay, and I can see, oh, fantastic. I can see some things here. Maybe you can look and see. I'm not sure, Anna, if it's possible to see as more people put their cameras on. Can you see something? Can you see somebody? Oh, I can see two which look quite similar here. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see a few there.
Okay, so you can look and see that you have, there's lots of different combinations, but you can probably all find something the same as well. Yeah. Okay. Oh, well done, Anna. I forgot to do mine.
Can't see it very well.
Okay, even with the picture. That's fantastic. Okay, so can you imagine doing this in class? Okay, you could probably do this in class as an activity. You could also do, for example, choosing how. Oh, thank you for putting them in the chat as well. That's excellent. So you could probably also do a similar activity with different breakfasts as well. Okay, you could do it instead of with initials with younger students. They could draw a picture of the chocolate spread sandwich as well. Okay, so there's different ways that you could adapt it. And the idea is that, yes, we're acknowledging that we're all different, but we all have similarities as well. Okay. So I'm just going to go back to sharing my presentation with you. So, and if you've got any other ideas about how you could do a similar activity, maybe not with a chocolate spread sandwich or with a breakfast, feel free to write them in the chat. Okay, and share your ideas. Okay, it's taking a moment to upload. Okay, and okay. So can you see the presentation again?
Yeah, that's fine now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, those were just different examples of initials that people might have. Okay, there. So thinking back to those first slides about the definition of diversity, you think about diversity, it could include any, many, or all of these different areas that you see here. So diversity, as I said, is very diverse. And what we're going to be focusing on today is diverse learning needs. Okay, so when we're talking about SEN or SEN, as these are terms which often crop up when we talk about diverse learning needs, you will come across acronyms like these, and there are many, many of them. So the PowerPoint will be available from the BC Padlet at the end, because there are lots of links in here. So don't worry about, you know, writing things down. It will all be there for you to handily click on at the end and get those links. So what you've got here is a guide to all the different SEN acronyms. Okay, it's also useful to look up, because acronyms can change. The way we talk about SEN needs and issues can also change as well. So that's a very handy guide for you there. Okay, but when I'm talking about SEN today, I'm talking about special education needs and disabilities. Okay, just so that you know. And if you're interested in getting into and finding out more about it, there is a British Council SEN course that you can do online. You register, it's free, I think. And it covers these different areas. There are different modules, so you can choose which ones you do. But there are lots of different areas. It doesn't cover all of them, so there are also other conditions, yeah, which it doesn't cover, but you'll be able to find out about by Googling. Okay. And they are really interesting areas to cover. These were chosen probably because these are the most frequently disclosed and identified ones. So that's why these particular ones were chosen. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to talk about what might give us an indication that we might have a learner with a SEN in our classroom, because we don't necessarily have that information. Okay, they might be new to the school. It might be something that becomes more apparent as the learner gets older, etc. So areas that are often used as indicators for SENs are areas of development and progress that relate to speech and language, literacy and numeracy, coordination and movement, their behaviour, and also cognition. Okay, so and it wouldn't necessarily, you know, be in just one area. It can overlap various areas or all of them. Okay, and quite often what you will find, and I'm sure as teachers you have found, is that what we first notice is the behaviour. Yeah, if perhaps a lack of progress or lack of pace, you know, compared to what you were expecting, and also perhaps behavioural issues as well. That is quite often what first gets our attention. Okay. So, and unfortunately, perhaps children who have not been diagnosed or perhaps have been misdiagnosed, they often can end up with some negative labels, such as these. Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to try and look at today is we're not going to try and focus on the behaviour that they're using to try and express how they feel. They might not really know what's going on. They don't quite understand why they're not able to follow a class, or perhaps they have low self-esteem because of that, so therefore they become quiet, etc. So we're going to look first of all at some areas of common indicators. So looking at the indicators which are most frequent for a number of SEN issues. Okay. So these are the most common indicators for the SEN issues that you can see at the top. In my experience, the ones that I'm most frequently informed about are dyslexia and ADHD in my teaching context. That might be different for yours. Okay, so these are some indicators that are perhaps what we can call the most common ones. And they come from a useful resource on the British Dyslexia Association website. You can see the link at the bottom. So when you go onto the Padlet, you'll be able to go there. But I'm just going to show you an example of what it might look like and exactly what it is. Okay, so you can see that it's called a neurodiversity profiler. It's a very posh name, and it's also could be known as a combined special learning disability checklist. Okay, so again, you can find the same thing with different names. So what can you see here? So in the left-hand column, you have got some conditions. Okay, the ones that you can see here, a lot of them, well, the first one says dyslexia, and then developmental language disorder. The second one says dyslexia, dyspraxia, developmental coordination. So you can see that there may be one or various SEN issues there. And then in the right-hand column, it notes an area of difficulty. For example, difficulty with phonological awareness, difficulty following instructions. So lots of quite specific things, quite detailed, and that is just one small area of it. Okay, so this is just a small example. If you click on and see and explore, you will see it's an Excel. There's a child-friendly one that they can then use. There are also questions that you can ask in an informal way to try and find out. Okay, but I wanted to make a few comments about using these types of checklists, how they can be helpful, okay, but also the pitfalls which we mustn't fall into, yeah, because I don't know about you, but I'm a teacher. I'm not a psychologist. So the profilers or checklists, that example that I've shown you before, so they can help you to think about your learner and help you really think about what areas they need help with. And as I say, often they will have a child-friendly or a learner-friendly version with smiley faces, language which is easier to understand, etc. And for this one, you don't need specialist training to be able to complete them. Okay, so they have their advantages, but we also need to think that we can't use that just as a diagnosis. We're teachers, it's not our job to diagnose. You need to do them, you need time and consideration. You can't just do it very quickly. Yeah, and well, it's just one step, okay, in the process. Can't just do that and say, oh, well, they've got this, and then that's that. Okay, so these are often a step of one of the first steps in trying to help your learners. Okay, and the example that I just shown you, that was a combined checklist, because you could see in the left-hand column that it had different SEND areas together. Okay, so if it's a combined checklist, it will be less detailed, than one which is just for one specific area of SEND. So there's also that to take into account. Yeah, so you would have to do some investigation as well. Okay. So they can be useful, and you will also find on that link in another part of the Excel sheet, it has some useful strategies for the different SEN areas, and that's what we're going to go on to talk about a little. But I also wanted to think that we mustn't jump to conclusions. We mustn't automatically think that just because a child is not perhaps progressing at the same pace or is not behaving in the way we would expect, that, oh, it must be that there's a SEN issue, oh, they must be ADHD because, you know, they can't sit still. There may be lots of other reasons, yeah? Okay, so some other possible reasons for, yeah, the challenging behaviour you might come across. Okay, by additional languages, what I mean is, for example, a learner who comes from another country that doesn't have, for example, Spanish as their home language, their second language, it's a language that they only use in their education. Okay. So we need to be aware that slow progress or challenged behaviour doesn't necessarily mean that there is a SEN issue. But we should also be aware that child who seems to be progressing okay, maybe not, you know, amazingly, they're not top or bottom of a class, there's nothing to worry about, but it's just average progress. That doesn't necessarily mean that they do not have a SEN issue, because many people will go undiagnosed for certain areas if they're able to develop through their own experience and through the bumps of life coping strategies. Okay, so just because someone is doing okay doesn't mean to say there is not an issue. So that's an interesting point to think about as well. Okay, so I want you to think, do you think labels such as, oh, this learner has ADHD or this learner is on this autistic spectrum, does it matter? And do you think the labels help? Okay, so we think about the first one, do labels matter? Well, do labels matter? So if you have a learner in class, you don't have any information, no SEN issue has been declared, but you can see that they are struggling in class, or perhaps they are presenting challenging behaviour. Well, it doesn't matter if you have a label or not. What matters is that you still have to teach that learner, you still have to help them in class. So, well, there's no point in saying, oh, wait and see if I get, you know, if a child gets a diagnosis. No, we can't, you know, you still need to teach that child now. So in that sense, having a label doesn't matter, whatever it is, because they might not ever get one. You still have to cater to that learner's needs. Okay, so do the labels help? I don't know what you think about this. Don't know if anybody. Okay, so well, oh, go in the chat. Let's have a look if anybody's put something in the chat. So Oliver says yes, if having a label leads to support, yes. Labels matter, we should know and be informed if possible. Yes. Okay, yes, I agree that they can help. We think about who they can help. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they do matter in that sense, but I think we shouldn't just wait until we get it. We have to teach the learner with or without the label. Okay. And so if we think about, do they help? So I was reading an interesting article last night about how behaviour and labels can mask a child's real needs. Yes. What might happen is that we tend to focus, if we do get a diagnosis or we do get a label, we tend to focus on the label perhaps rather than that particular learner. Yeah. So for example, on that Excel on the checklist, there's some helpful strategies. You might think, oh, well, now they've told me, you know, my learner has ADHD. I'll go and I'll look at those strategies, and that will wave a magic wand, and that'll be fine. But maybe those strategies aren't the strategies that that child needs. Yeah. Okay, so they can be helpful. They can be helpful for all your class, those strategies. But the thing is, you need to really know the learner. Yeah. So the article was talking about this, about how there tends to be a focus on the diagnosis rather than on the learner and how to get over that. And for example, from the learner's point of view, from the family's point of view, yes, of course they can help, because they can help us as teachers and as educational institutions to be able to make those adaptations for them as they progress through their educational experience, and also into their working lives. There can be support through different organizations for the learner and for the families to help them understand. What can happen as a child gets older is that they won't want to be seen. Perhaps this isn't always the case, but my personal experience has been that there can come a time when there's a rejection of, for example, wanting any special help or having any special considerations. They don't want to appear different to their peers, to their friends. They don't want their friends to think that they're having any special preferential treatment. So they can become, they might fight against what perhaps they previously existed. So there might come a time where that person doesn't like their label so much. So there are lots of different experiences. So I talked about how there might be a focus to look at typical strategies and not look at the learner, that individual learner. Okay, but we are going to look at strategies now, and it's up to us as teachers to find out about our learners and try and find out which ones work for them. Okay, so maybe you'd like to put in the chat if I said this situation, and you give me some ideas in the chat. Okay, so for example, we're all at the beginning of a new year. You've got a new class, new students. You don't know them. There's no, information that any of them have any SEN issues, but you have someone in class who is perhaps not able to follow in the way you would want them to, and is perhaps presenting some challenging behaviour. So what would be your first steps in how you're going to start approaching this? What would you do first of all? If people want to put some ideas in the chat, that would be great. Okay, while you're thinking, I'm just going to have a wee sip of water. Okay, you're having a think. Okay, so Anna suggests speaking to the child's parents. Maria suggests speak to the child. Okay. Speak to the child. Okay, directly try and praise his or her effort. Yeah, okay, so we're always trying to look for strengths. Okay, yeah. So, for example, some things you might like to do is, talk to the previous teacher if that's at all possible, to try and find out more about them. Maybe they have some experience from previous year. Maybe they can tell you something which is, not on the record, something related to home life, perhaps. You might like to try and make some quick notes if they're presenting challenging behaviour, as to when in the class it happens, what type of activity are you doing when it happens, what have they been asked to do, who are they with. Maybe you will try and start to see a pattern, and then you'll be able to change something within the routine that might change that behaviour. Okay, yeah, notice what the child does well or likes, etc. So again, it's all finding out about the child. Sitting them close to the teacher, yeah. If you're, so having some notes about when different things happen or what type of activity can really help you to think about how you can help them. And also perhaps having some examples of their work as well, so that you're able to reflect on in what way they are not progressing. Okay, that's especially helpful. These types of things are especially helpful for when you do go and speak to the family. So I would, personally, in my experience, try and get some notes, some examples of work, and also ask, if possible, for someone to come in and observe the lesson. Another person with a different point of view who's not actually doing the main teaching will be able to observe and perhaps notice different things that we might miss out if we're heading the class. So some notes from that would be helpful. And then probably with those types of things, we're less likely to be using any of those negative adjectives or labels when we talk about the child, which is extremely important and helpful for when we go to talk to families. And also probably at the same time, you're trying different things, perhaps changing different things and noticing what helps and what doesn't help them, yeah, or what works and what doesn't work. Okay, so well, let's have a look at some strategies. So remembering that these are general strategies, so they could be good for all our students, yeah, not just our SEN students, because we want to be as inclusive as possible. So I always try and apply these to the whole class, because I think everybody can benefit from them. But we have to remember, we're always trying to find out about the individual learners. Okay, so some of these will be review for you, will be pretty obvious, but a good reminder, I think. Okay, so keeping to routines, but also, for example, having a visual reminder of a routine or the timetable as well. This can be helpful for different people. So, for example, somebody who is perhaps on the autistic spectrum, they like to know their routine in advance, and if they've got it there visually close to them, then that can be helpful and reassuring. For example, someone with poor working memory or who has finds it difficult to follow the instructions, again, having them there visually, they can check with without having to miss half of it. And for anybody who's working, they can quickly check it, and then they can go and they can focus on what they have to really work on, not trying to remember what's happening next or what the next step in the instructions are. So having visuals and keeping them up there are good. Okay, we're talking about instructions. We're trying to break down our instructions and keeping them clear and simple, checking back, and again, providing visual versions of them as well. So they could be simple flashcards, stick drawings on the board. Okay, it doesn't have to be anything flash. Okay, keeping our language and instructions affirmative, what we want them to do, not focusing on what we don't want them to do, can be helpful as well. Okay, and then allowing more think time, yeah, between answers, between instructions, to help check as well. And then giving students examples of the work that you want them to produce, of what it could look like, and quite often help students not quite sure how to get into whatever it is they're doing. Well, that will be really helpful for them. Okay, and you can see some links here. Okay, classroom screen at the beginning, and another one of Waggle. So Waggle, anybody want to put in the chat what you think Waggle might mean? Any ideas? What's that acronym? You can quickly Google it. I can tell you, or you can put it in the chat. Yay, okay, what a good one looks like. Okay, so providing an example, what a good example looks like, what you want them to aim for. And then we've got overlearning and multi-sensory methods. Okay, what's overlearning? Is that tied to teachers, do you think? Anybody? You want to put in the chat what's overlearning? Okay, people are thinking about that one. Okay, right. So, well, overlearning is more content than one can cope with. Practice and repetition. Okay, any other suggestions? Okay, well, the idea of overlearning is that you present the same content through different media. So it might be through text, it might also be through a video, then through a story, then by producing something. Okay, so you're approaching the content from lots of different ways. So it's kind of feeding into the multi-sensory method in a way as well. Okay, so you're not looking at something just once, just through reading a text. Okay, so again, more strategies for everybody. So, yeah, this is one which I find really difficult not to do. Yeah, to not, when they're writing, to not talk, to give them little helpers or remind them of things. Okay, so you know how that can kill the train of thought. Okay, so yeah, that's something I need to work on myself. But well. Okay, like we're saying, we're trying to find out about a learner, and if we can engage them through through their personal or special interest into the content, then that's going to be more motivating for them as well. Okay, so also, yeah, quite often children who as they become aware that they might be struggling in class, that they're not achieving the same as their peers, well, they can develop low esteem. So ways of boosting the self-esteem, try and give them, for example, if we're talking about younger students, roles in the classroom, some type of monitor that they can easily achieve, gives them a small sense of responsibility, etc. Or simple targets that they're able to achieve and review them regularly. Okay. Okay, and then again, some fairly obvious things, yeah. So, you know, we all teach, I think, mixed ability, and everybody has different ideas about should you know, put people with the same level of ability together, or should you mix them up? Well, I think, you know, there needs to be variety, so everybody gets different experiences. Okay. And then it says moving on to having a secret sign or traffic light system. So, for example, if you have a student who, you know, struggles to pay attention for as long as you would like them to, then perhaps having a secret sign they can use with you that's agreed beforehand, as in, you know, I need to stand up for a moment, I need to go for a quick walk in the corridor, etc. A secret sign is a great idea. It could be a gesture, or it could be, you know, a card on the table that they turn over. Okay, and actually having different signs that you can teach the whole class can lead to less interruption. So having ones like this, like, you know, I need help, I need a pencil, need to go to the toilet. So you can teach different signs for different little messages they want to communicate to you, and then there's less interruption. And it makes it less obvious as well. Okay, here are some more general strategies. And here, for example, this one, the Carol Gray Social Stories. This is where I got the idea for the chocolate spread sandwich survey from. This is the original one. Okay, and she also has short stories on there as well, and different activities that explore, you know, diversity, individuality, etc., and acceptance. Okay. Twinkle, I'm sure you all know Twinkle. That is a fantastic site that has lots of resources for lots of different areas. Okay, they have lots of handy things for learners who are learning English as an additional language, and also lots of SEN related materials as well. Okay. So what about if it's specifically in a language classroom? Some different strategies here. So thinking of going from, first of all, very young learners, okay, using tactile things, for example, magnetic or plastic letters, also using plasticine or Play-Doh to form letters, letter writing on your hand or in the air, using a piece of ribbon or string to make the shape. So we're getting all the multi-sensory benefits of forming the letter and then listening to the sound and repeating the sound, etc. Okay, so using TPR, so total physical response, using sign language and gestures, for example, Makaton is also really good for the younger learners to teach and review, especially vocabulary. I've always found that really fun to use in class. And okay, so there's a Jamboard from another session I did where you can find lots of different ideas and links for TPR. And TPR doesn't have to, you know, stop, you know, at primary. There are lots of fantastic TPR ideas, not just for vocabulary, but for different grammatical points, and for using with adults as well. And you can find that link on that Jamboard there. I'll show it to you in a minute. Okay, other things such as tapping or clapping out words and language chunks so that learners can be more aware of syllables that are involved or how words join up. I've always found that really helpful as well. You know, visuals to connect to the word to the meaning. Okay, so this is the Jamboard. Okay, you've got the link there with some examples of how you might be reviewing weather vocabulary and different activities that you can do with it, and how you can extend just from simple pictures. It also looks at then how you can introduce the written word as well. So it doesn't have to be when it's only pictures, it can be with written words as well. There's lots of ideas on there, but we haven't got time to go through them all now, so that will be your homework if you want. Okay, and then on the second page of a Jamboard, there are different links to articles about TPR, using Makaton and sign language, which I also involve in TPR as well, and brain break ideas. Okay, so for example, here in the TEFLtastic website is where you can find lots and lots of TPR ideas and activities to use with older students and with adults. for all grammatical points. Okay, so it doesn't have to stop at primary. Okay, and moving on, I can see we only have a few minutes left, I think. So letting the learner have key vocabulary or key concepts before the lesson can be really, really helpful. Okay, so, and again, you might want to do this discreetly just with those learners who need it, or you might want to do it with all your learners to keep it as inclusive as possible. So pre-teaching or reviewing the vocabulary before you even start the lesson. Yeah, and then, you know, keeping that key vocabulary that you're going to be working on visual. You know, there's not the whole lesson isn't a test. There are lots of people who, you know, they need to have the glossary or the visuals or the reminder during the time. And also it's important that it is close to the learners. There's no point you've got it up on a poster in the corner of the classroom. That's not going to be very helpful for learners, for example, with poor working memory or with visual impairment. They need to have it as close to them as possible on the table or where they can see it well. So things like color coding, grammar and spelling patterns, you can see examples of here. So there's a website I really like called Nessie, which explains really well spelling rules and phonetics for learners with dyslexia, which is fantastic. They have some really fun videos which explain lots of different basic points. Color coding different types of grammatical words consistently and build, and then that's something that you can build on is really helpful as well. So things like Jolly Grammar are helpful there. You can get ideas from there. Okay, learners often benefit from really explicit explanations as opposed to the discover by yourself method. They do need to have explicit explanations and to review the grammatical rules, and you'll probably need to break those down into smaller parts as well. Okay, obvious things like, you know, reviewing the language and the vocabulary as regularly as possible. If you're moving on to reading, then, you know, reading with a partner, they take it in turns to read to each other, which will help to take the pressure off. You might also want to or need to look at technology, text to audio readers, etc. And this website is has some really good resources and useful links where you can find out about different technology devices for different areas of SEND and needs as well. And they have it. I really recommend you look at that as well. So, Anna, is that time up?
Well, we are at 2:30, but I mean, I'm sure if you want to add a couple of extra things, that's also fine. I just wanted to make you aware that we're getting to the end.
Okay, thank you very much. So as you can see, there's lots of links and ideas there. You'll probably think, well, yeah, I know all of that already. But there's lots of resources which are good to go away and investigate and think, you know, which ones can I do with all of my class? Which ones are going to benefit certain students and how can I include them? Okay, we want to be as inclusive as possible, but there are times when we will need to differentiate as well. Okay, but the thing is about we need to know our learners as well as possible. Okay, so here's an interesting question. We thought about everything there. So should we lower our expectations of students with SEN? What do you think? You want to put any ideas in the chat? I've quite often heard, oh, you know, I've been told my child's got dyslexia, so they shouldn't be learning a foreign language. Do you think that's a good idea? Okay, again, yeah, Martha says it depends on each case. It depends on knowing the learner. Okay, very good points. Is that being realistic, be empathetic, and believe in our students? Those are very nice points. Yes, be empathetic. We do also have to be realistic as well. Okay, good point, Anna. Yeah, not to lower expectations, but change them depending on the child. So, yeah, you know, we need to look for the students' strengths as well, not just focus on the SEN and what they cannot do, but find their strengths within them as well. So it's not about lowering our expectations, it's about adapting them, I think, as well. So that's something to think about. And then here, these last few slides, which will be in the Padlet. Yeah, exactly. You said not lower, more of adjusting. We are all different, absolutely. I don't know about your chocolate spread sandwich. Mine was very different. Okay, so there's just a few slides at the end which have useful resources and documents. There's a little introduction to what each one does or what it's about. Some courses, the British Council case studies. Judith Cormos article, she's very big in dyslexia and second language learning. Okay, the guide to specific learning details. There's a Padlet I produced for something else, I can't remember what now, which looks at different resources for teaching phonics, for literacy, and how you can adapt different texts in the classroom and the idea of overlearning. Oh, thank you. Okay. So Anna's put something in the chat about, is this, what site is this on, Anna?
Yeah, this is just a British Council MOOC, which is for reflective learning. It's not specifically to do with diversity, but it's something that might be useful and interesting for teachers. So I've just put it in the chat.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so there's lots of different things there. And yeah, if you're interested in studying, then Future Learn has some good introductory courses also about different areas of SEN, which you can see there. So that's a good first step to go in. There's a British Council course as well, and there's one about supporting educational needs. Okay, as you start investigating, you'll see that there's lots and lots out there. So that's why I decided to include this here as you know, some of the interesting tidbits that I found, because if you do start to Google, it can be a bit overwhelming what to choose to read and investigate. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now. And yeah, if anybody wants to ask any questions or has any comments they would like to make.
If you've got any comments, thank you so much for the talk, Gillian. It's been extremely full. You've included a lot of detail there that I think people will find really useful. Lots of strategies, lots of websites and materials that we can go and investigate now. Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah. You put a lot of effort into this. I was doing a bit of trying to do a bit over learning, over teaching there. No, but it's so great. As I was saying, there's so much. There's a lot, but it's great because people can, as you've said several times, people can go to the Padlet. It's all there. Please do take 5 minutes to have a look through all of this material, because I think it will be useful. And as I say, please do have a look at the MOOC as well that I put in the chat. And that's it, really. I mean, is there anything else anyone would like to ask, or any other? No. We don't have any more comments. Yeah. Oh, well, I think, you know, there's lots to think about. Yeah, the main thing, get to know your students and focus on the learners, not on the diagnosis, if there is one. Good advice. Great. Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, Gillian. Thanks everybody for coming today. that's the end of the online conference. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing some of you again soon.
Okay, thank you,
Nice
Anna.
afternoon.
Thank you for
Thank you.
mediating. And I hope you all go away now and enjoy your chocolate spread sandwiches you're thinking about, no doubt.
Everyone's hungry at this point.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, thank you to everybody for coming. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.